So today on my beautiful client Diane, we are just doing a little face frame mini partial, if you will. She's going on vacation, so we're just refreshing right where she parts her hair, since we just did her hair about 6 weeks ago and we had done a full head. So I'm using Blondie Schwarzkopf and 20 volume. And usually I don't go this high, but because it was such a small section that we were doing, I didn't want the processing to take forever, so I increased the developer, what I would usually do when I get up to the top after doing a full head. So right here I'm carving out a slice that I'm going to use, and then I'm just taking a little bit of a subsection to keep in between just so that she has some natural, so it grows out soft. And I am doing Airtouch. I'm just doing slices because we're going for a bolder look, so I didn't want to weave her or anything. And we're trying to mimic what her natural gray is, and she's pretty decently gray on the top of her head. So it's a pretty repetitive thing here, so I'm not going to explain it too much, but essentially it's just slice, Airtouch, and then I'm running it through wherever there is gold and on her natural. So I'm basically saturating her natural hair color, and then I'm feathering down into areas that might be a little gold, just to kind of lift them up a little bit more. So now I'm working here on her left hand side, and it's just the same thing. I probably did about 5 foils on each side of her part. So I did the behind, because you never want to leave that dark and then it just looks unfinished if you do that. And that's also where her hair tends to split because she has a calic. So I like to make sure that if her hair splits, it's not going to be a giant dark patch. And I went horizontally this time. Usually I go vertically when I'm doing a whole head, but since I'm doing just a small section, I decided to do horizontal because it's going to actually cover more instead of leaving a more striped effect, if that makes sense. So it'd have a little more dimension as opposed to contrast of like a dark and a light, a dark and a light. And yeah, again, I'm just taking slices. I'm keeping a little thin section of her natural out in between each just to make sure it grows out really smooth. And yeah, this application's almost done. I have her right side, and then I have her little money piece in the front. So when I get up to there, I'll explain what I'm doing. So right here, I'm just, again, doing her right side now, I believe it is. And I am just continuing the same technique, the same placement. And like I said, I only did about 5 foils on each side of her part. Simply because, you know, we had just done her hair, so she doesn't need to do a full head. It's just not necessary. And when you see the end, it's going to look like we did a full head anyway. And plus also it keeps some dimension, so the blonde pieces can sit on top of some of that dark and actually pop out and look brighter. So super fun. So I'm finishing up her right section here. I believe this is the last foil. I always like to lock my foils in place too, just to make sure. And now I'm going to start her money piece. She likes a little bit of a more bold money piece, so I'm doing 3 back-to-back slices, and then the final one I am doing Airtouch. I am actually tearing my foils in half just to make them a little bit smaller, since these hairs are a little more fine and delicate around her face, just so that this way a heavy foil isn't going to slip. And I'm still using 20 volume here. You know, I only mix enough that I need for a section. I don't like to overmix, because when you overmix, it ends up sitting out and it just doesn't really work its strongest by the time you get to the end. And yeah, so I have one more slice that I'm gonna do here. And again, I'm tearing my foils in half. So I'm gonna just go in here, paint on just the root, because the money pieces were already fairly light to begin with, so I don't need to overlap anything there. Overlapping is just in, you know, those situations where it's just a little gold. And then this last section, I actually did Airtouch, just so that it would have a little depth right behind it, so it wouldn't just be a giant chunk. I processed her for about 30 minutes after finishing all of this. I'm gonna show you all the foils here. Nice and neat. I'm gonna show you how it's lifting, and this is the after. I toned her with Wella Pale Platinum and 6 volume for about 15 minutes. After shampooing her, I used the same formulation but with 20 volume on the ends just to brighten them. Tell me what you think.